No longer trauma and transcendence. You know that we've had a quick rebrand, and here we are, episode 2 already, and you are now at Soul Rain. It is the same show, same vibe, different name. And the purpose here is for you to reign your soul. I want you to have your sovereignty, and that's what these episodes are about. Today, we have an incredible guest for sovereignty. I have the wonderful coach, um, rock and roll Ronnie. And she's primarily an expert in her field of overcoming and healing narcissistic abuse. Welcome, Ronnie.
Rock and roll coach Ronnie. Like,
Rock and
yeah.
roll coach Ronnie. That's right. You have had an incredible year this year. One, I know because I'm a student, I'm in some of your classes, so I've had the awesome experience of learning and training with you. I see you at conferences. You've got so many speaking engagements. It's been just beautiful to watch you this year. And then your book was that this year as well?
It was released end of last year, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, 2025, it was hard. I'm not going to lie. I think it was a pretty hard year for all of us in some sort of way, right? The year of the snake and all. But as you just said, it's been pretty amazing. Yeah.
Productive. You've gotten a lot done. So that was a very full 2025 for you.
Yeah.
What got you started in the path of healing narcissistic abuse?
Well, I mean, needless to say, you don't really end up in this line of work unless it has happened to you. So I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse myself. And yeah, almost 10 years ago now, I was basically living my dream life in LA, California at the time. And I got involved with the wrong man again. And what I would later realize was it wasn't the first time, it was just the worst time. And that time would, cost me literally everything. It cost me my job, it cost me my house, it cost me my health, my sanity, and it almost cost me my life. And as a result of that, I was very much struggling with my mental health. And um, I was very committed to getting better. And I would go to therapy religiously every week, and every week nothing changed. And at times it felt like it was even getting worse. And if you're anything like me, right, you put your time, your money, your effort, your tears into something, you want to get results. And I wasn't getting any. So I got really frustrated. And when I brought that up with my therapist, who was lovely, like really lovely, and I was so grateful to have her. But she said to me, well, unfortunately, that's what your life is like now. And it's something you need to accept. And we need to find ways to manage it. And I was at a point in my life where I couldn't have promised you I'd still be alive tomorrow. So it wasn't a state of being I could just accept. And that's when I went out there basically on a mission, really, to find something that could reverse the damage as effectively as it was caused. And I didn't know what I was looking for, obviously, but I knew that something had happened to me. I didn't know what it was exactly, because back then narcissistic abuse wasn't really a thing. But I knew something had happened to me that turned me into this mess. So clearly, if it goes one way, there has to be a way for it to go the other way. And that became my mission, to find that something. And I guess because I was really at a point in my life where I had nothing left to lose, I was able to just go all in. Because honestly, if I had died in the process of finding this something, I would have been okay with that as well. But of course, my motivation was to live. And I did find what I was looking for. And once I did, I found things like coaching and NLP and hypnosis. And once I did, I was post traumatic stress symptom free within 5 months. And that was without any specialist application.
Yeah.
And that's how I then, you know, became what I am now. That's why I do what I do now, because unfortunately, the whole mainstream narrative when we go and look for help um, hasn't changed much in all that time. So
At what point in that journey did you start to get coordinates of, oh, this is narcissistic abuse?
That took quite a while because narcissistic abuse wasn't a thing at that time. Like, narcissistic abuse didn't mean anything. I was the first person pretty much talking about narcissistic abuse professionally, probably in all of Europe. I was the UK's first narcissistic abuse recovery coach. I was the one who made up the term narcissistic abuse recovery coaching because I had to call myself something. And I mean, nowadays it's just a job title, but I actually thought something about it because if you think about it, narcissistic abuse recovery coach, the acronym is NARC.
Hmm.
So it's a subliminal reframe from something bad to something good. Like, I actually thought about that. So back then, it really wasn't that much of a thing. There was like one book I remember, which was called Psychopath Free. So, where the experience was referred to having been abused by a psychopath. And of course, we know that psychopaths are on the same spectrum, but of course, not every narcissist is a psychopath. And I cannot even remember how I picked up on the word narcissist, because obviously the meaning of it has significantly changed since then. It has evolved from what it originally was, and I guess I was just fortunate that the terminology was picked up on, because then all of a sudden narcissistic abuse became a thing, and over the last, I don't know, 3 years or something. I mean, it's gotten a whole life on its own,
Yeah.
really.
On my own journey through therapy, it was very rarely the therapists that were able to inform me of that. And what I noticed is if they haven't experienced it, that's not even on their radar. They have no idea. They think, oh, it's just you're just dealing with a difficult person. No,
Yeah, I
it's not
think
just a difficult person.
no. I mean, that's a big
Yeah.
disconnect, not only with
Mhm.
professionals, right? It's also disconnect with family and with friends, because narcissistic abuse is one of
Yeah.
the things, unless it has happened to you, your brain cannot even comprehend the horrors. I think nowadays it's a little bit better because there is just so much more awareness
Yeah. It's
around the
almost
topic,
it's
right?
almost the other extreme. It's almost like now there's a saturation and it's starting to lose the meaning because people are straying too
I
far.
know, I know. And that's a lot of the work that I do now, actually, because like the first 3 years, it was really about knocking on doors and just keeping talking about it and listen to me. And then now, especially on social media, it's almost at a turning point where people are just so tired of the word narcissist. Everyone all of a sudden is a narcissist. Every relationship that breaks up was abusive. Of course, that's not the case. So a big part of my work now is actually reining that back in
Yeah.
and, still talking about it, but even more with the emphasis of talking about it in the right way, because a lot of the
Yeah.
content that's out there, and there's so much content now, but a
Mhm.
lot of it is not very beneficial at
Yeah.
all. It's misinformation, it's really bad linguistically, it comes from people that haven't done their healing, so the energy that's attached to that content is really bad and really hindering to the recovery, because oftentimes it comes from pain,
Yeah.
hurt, from bitterness, from resentment, from hate. And of course, those are energies, especially as empaths, we don't want to engage in, because we pick up on those energies. So it's very, very important that we keep talking about it, but we need to do it in the right way. And there's also a big difference between what's happening on social media. I mean, narcissistic abuse, I think, is the third most trending hashtag on TikTok.
Mm.
I'm not on
Wow.
TikTok, which I really should. But time. And so on social media, it's this massive big thing, but in the real world, it actually isn't, because that's why the survivors still struggle to find help. They are still
Yeah.
misunderstood. Even with my speaking engagements, I can see how it has moved towards the mainstream. Like, now I speak at big trauma conferences, but that's new. Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I wouldn't have had that stage, whereas now I do. So there is a bit of a disconnect between what's happening online and what's happening in the real world, where
Yeah.
online it's already almost over the top, where people lose interest, whereas in the real world we are only just starting out. Like that platform, that understanding, that interest is only happening right now, actually.
Yeah. And there's a weird thing that I've noticed happening in that the people who are talking about it are not often always the ones who've had the experience of it. And those that are in the middle of it, they have no idea. They don't use those terms. They don't know what it is to be gaslit, but it's happening to them every day.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
that's what's
mean,
really wild.
it's also when you're in it, right?
Mhm.
You have your blinkers on because your brain cannot even comprehend what you're experiencing. You cannot make sense of it. And I think all of us who have experienced narcissistic abuse can remember knowing that something is very wrong, not being able to figure out what it was, but actually, I mean, I remember I thought I was the problem. I was living in LA. I was very much involved in the whole like Hollywood, thing. And I just thought, oh, well, Hollywood got to me after all. And I really thought that I just turned out to be one of LA's fallen angels. And it didn't even occur to me that I had been abused until I can't even remember how long that took. Probably a few months after I had gotten out. Up until that point, I thought, well, I just lost it. And Hollywood gets to you eventually. Like nobody gets out there without being affected by it. But it didn't even occur to me, even though all the things that he did, looking back now, it was so obvious. It was in plain sight. But because it's part of the gaslighting as well, right? Because your reality is so distorted
Yeah.
and you're dealing with somebody who supposedly is the closest person to you. So you initially don't even have reason to not trust them
Yeah.
because those are the last people you would think would do something bad to you. So it's very, very common. And I think everyone who has experienced narcissistic abuse had to go or is still going through that, like that realization. And then, of course, it comes a lot with anger, with self blame, like, how did I not see this? And all of those kind of things. So it's quite complex, actually.
The trauma bond. We're going to have to come back to that in a moment. But the trauma bond is devastating, absolutely devastating. Now, I experienced it differently. Um, in hindsight, my first
Hmm.
husband may have had some traits. I don't know that I would go full out and call him that. I'm not, and I'm not able to diagnose people. So my experience was more in terms of my family of origin, which is a little bit different. But there were a lot of those things. And the trauma bond, I see it now when I see people
Hmm.
trying to leave enmeshed family dynamics. But we'll circle back around to that. But I want to ask, because I know people are going to be listening, and that was my experience too of there must be something wrong with me. It's me. I'm the problem. I'm the common denominator. What is wrong with me? And then I'd go into like a full on emotional flashback, shame spiral, and it's a devastating place to be. And it is very,
Hmm.
very dangerous for the reasons that you'd already talked about. What were some of the earlier signs that started to show you that something had happened to you? Like, how were you responding and identifying of this is unhealthy or there's something not right here?
Well, my mental health pretty much tanked overnight, and I wasn't familiar with mental health challenges at that point. I mean, everybody has like ups and downs, but I was not familiar with anxiety or depression. I wasn't familiar with suicidal thoughts. I was literally not functioning. I had physical withdrawal symptoms. Like when he wasn't around, I would physically shake, like my body would shake. I couldn't sleep anymore. And I basically lost all sense of reality. And it happened so quick. Like there was no subtle like going into this. It was like a crash and burn kind of thing. So I very quickly realized that something was very, very wrong. But of course, I had no idea what I was dealing with. And my friends also could tell that something was very, very wrong because all of a sudden I was a complete mess. I was behaving totally out of character. I was all of a sudden this crazy woman, and we've all have experienced the crazy woman, who's hysterical, who starts fights, who's really jealous. And I used to be like this really, like cool, chilled rock chick, and then all of a sudden I was the one who was causing havoc, because of course, the situations he put me in. But nobody would make those connections because all they see is your behavior. And I remember my friends trying to talk to me like, what's going on with you? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I can feel that something is wrong with me, but I really don't know what it is. And because you already mentioned the trauma bond, I can remember, especially in the beginning when I didn't have the language to express what was going on. I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like an addict. I feel like he is my drug. And I also behaved like an addict, of course.
I'm surprised that we called it the trauma bond. I mean, that's the perfect term, but it's almost like Stockholm. It behaves kind of in the same way when someone's love, their resources, connection, safety all comes from one person. Even if it's like not real safety, it's perceived
Yeah.
safety. But when it
I mean,
all comes
Stockholm
from one
syndrome
person,
is a form of trauma bond, right? It's
yeah,
like the most well-known form of trauma bonding.
yeah.
So
And that's just it. But so I guess the relationship dynamics is what makes it different. Stockholm, that usually is because it's a parent. It's usually a family member. It's been happening since early childhood. And I think that's why we called it trauma bond. But what I want to explain just to the audience so that they understand this well is it occurs when all of the good resources or the things that you perceive as good are coming from one person. This person that loves you, cares for you, takes care of you, feeds you, all of those things. And then that's also the person that is then causing harm. And the brain doesn't understand that. It can't handle that concept. So it's hard to identify the abuse when that happens in that way. So the trauma bond that Ronnie is talking about is one of the more difficult things, I think, for a lot of people who have dating and romantic relationships or even friendships to break.
well, it's the same with families, right? Because it's a chemical reaction in the brain. So it doesn't only feel like an addiction, it is an actual addiction. So another word for trauma bond is also love addiction.
Mhm.
And I mean, anybody who's ever been in love knows that love is literally the highest high there is. And as you just said, that person who gives you all of those good feelings, right? All this oxytocin, all this dopamine, all this serotonin is also the same person who takes it away and puts you basically in a life threatening situation. And the brain gets misregulated with the chemicals that are flooded in the brain. And that's how this is an actual chemical reaction. So
Yeah.
it's not like, I mean, we all know people that shouldn't be in that relationship, that shouldn't be working in that job, that should have not, should have cut off that family member already, but they just can't bring themselves to do it, or they keep going back. And when somebody is trauma bonded, it literally has nothing to do with a lack of willpower,
Yeah.
because we are dealing with chemicals in the brain, and that's outside of the willpower. And that's what makes it also so challenging to disconnect, because we are dealing with an actual addiction here. And I think once we become aware of that, that makes the recovery so much easier, because we know how to actually address it, rather
Yeah.
than blindly trying to figure it out and using willpower to stay away when the brain is just not complying with that at all.
Yeah. That whole body is on a chemical cocktail. It's so much more than just the positive feelings. It absolutely is addiction. I'm impressed that in the moments that you were away, your body would start to shake. It's like your nervous system knew, oh, I can start to decompress and shake it off. Mine did not.
Well,
That
I don't
didn't
think
it
I
didn't
don't think
happen
it
on its
was
own.
I don't
Yeah.
think it was decompression at all. It was like literal physical withdrawal.
Wow.
Yeah.
I find that, yeah, I find that so different. So when I think about like when my body shakes, for me, that's a nervous system response of, okay, we just went through something. At least that's, I've never had it in the way that you are describing.
Yeah, and I did TRE, trauma release exercise, and my body, I've only been able to get it into this shaking, releasing state once. So when I, talk about I was shaking
Yeah.
on my whole body, it definitely wasn't a trauma release. Like it was like a proper withdrawal response in the body.
I've not done TRE. I don't have experience with it. Could you explain a little bit what it is for the listeners?
So TRE, trauma release exercise or tension release exercise, like they use both names, is where you put the body in a certain position where it will naturally start vibrating, like your muscles will start shaking. And it sounds very uncomfortable, but actually it's not at all. It's actually quite pleasant. And what it helps to do is releasing the tension, because obviously when we store trauma in our body, we are very, very tense. And animals, for example, when they have a traumatic experience, they just shake it off. We've all seen it, right, in animal documentaries and whatever. But as humans, we kind of lost that, um, not that we lost the strategy, but we're not, it's not an automated response that we have. So what TRE allows us to do is actually create this release in the muscles in the body, so to release that tension that the trauma has caused.
So I've only encountered things like that when doing breath work. Typically, that was what we practice first, and then we go into the breath work. And I think that's what made it that much deeper and effective. So I appreciate you explaining that. That just made a whole bunch of sense to that first breathwork experience that I'd had.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, after you finally got the coordinates, you had an understanding of what this was, you began to inform yourself and get educated. What was that process like for you?
Well, as I said, back then it was very difficult to get information because there wasn't really anything out there. It didn't exist on social media. There were a couple of books, but nothing really. And it was a bit like, putting puzzle pieces together, but then it also very quickly turned into the snowball. And I remember the one thing that made the biggest difference when I went like, oh wow, this is what's happening here, was when I stumbled across the word gaslighting. And gaslighting already existed. It wasn't used like it is now to that extent, because it was what, word of the year 2022 or something, so again, a word that's constantly misused nowadays. But I accidentally stumbled across gaslighting, and I was like, oh my goodness, it actually wasn't me. Because that's the whole thing, right? That's like part of the game. Your reality gets distorted to such an extent that nothing you remember seems to be true. And then of course this is incredibly destabilizing, because you lose all trust in yourself, and you lose the connection to reality, because you don't remember what is actually true, what happened, what didn't happen. You're being accused of saying or doing things where you go like, I said that, it doesn't even sound like me. Like, what is wrong with me, right?
Yeah.
And when I stumbled across gaslighting, that was so incredibly insightful, because that gave me the permission to go like, hold on a second, there is nothing wrong with me. This actually was orchestrated by somebody, and my response to it was a natural response. And then from then on, it kind of was like putting the puzzle pieces together, and it went from gaslighting to narcissistic abuse, psychopath, then into the whole trauma research, complex trauma, neuroscience. Like I read like medical journals, all those kind of things. And I mean, I think pretty much every narcissistic abuse survivor goes through those motions. I haven't met a single one of us who couldn't write a PhD on the topic. But then it's very, very important to understand that this is only a very, very small part of the journey, because we can have all the in depth knowledge. But if we keep it all just to the cognitive function of the brain, no actual healing is happening. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. And I was stuck there for a while as well, because I didn't even know that healing would go further
Yeah.
than that. And but once I had that realization, that was when the shift really started happening. Because once you start practical healing work, there is no going back from that. Whereas as long as you focus only on the theoretical, you may have the knowledge, but you're still not feeling better. And another danger is that you feel safer because you think you've figured it all out, but then, you just run into a different shade of narcissist that you haven't experienced yet, and all of a sudden you find yourself in the same situation again.
Yeah. That phenomenon is the worst. It's just the worst. And you think that, oh, okay, I'm not going to date that kind of person again. And then you end up getting a boss that way or a coworker that way, or you find a new friendship and it's those same patterns again,
And it
but
will
with like a
always
different
be
flavor.
the same patterns, right?
Yeah.
Until you actually do something about it. And you're the only one who can change that. So no matter how much you read about it, no much how much in-depth knowledge you have, that's not where the actual healing happens.
Yeah. So when you began your education, did you start with coaching? Did you start with hypnotherapy? What was the order of that?
Now, the first thing I stumbled across was coaching, and that was actually, I wasn't interested in, becoming a coach or anything, but it was a really, really hot summer. And I had this top floor flat in London, and I was just sitting there and sweaty, and UK, no ACs, right? And this ad popped up on my Facebook because somebody had liked the Coaching Academy, which is a big coaching provider in the UK. And it, was basically an ad for weekend learn the skills of life coaching. And I'm like, well, I guess that's interesting, better than sitting here sweating, because it was a fancy hotel. So I was like, I bet they have AC. And that was actually my motivation to go there. And I mean, at that point in time, I wasn't working. I felt really bad about myself. I was feeling sorry for myself. So it was kind of like, better sitting there than sitting at home, and the AC, of course. And then I went there, and it was very, very basic life coaching, but it was very practical. And of course, it was a sales event, but it didn't feel like a sales event. And we had to practice on each other. And what that did, even though it was just really basic coaching, was it shifted my focus back onto myself. Because up until that point, it was all about what had happened. It was all
Yeah.
about the guy. It was all about reading about narcissists. And what that did was it shifted my focus, and it instantly made me feel better. And so the first day I was like, oh, this is interesting. The second day, my brain started thinking, how can I incorporate this into what I'm already doing? And maybe eventually shift out, because I used to be a CPA. I'm still a CPA, but I had this finance career, and I was kind of like, how can I build it in there? But maybe eventually shift out of that. On the third day, I had my application interview, and then 10 days later, I actually incorporated my first company. So that thing was a complete game changer. And through the coaching training, I learned about NLP, and then did my NLP training, NLP master training. Through NLP, I found hypnosis. Then I went off and did, I don't know how many hypnosis trainings. And I got completely sidetracked, actually. And within the shortest period of time, I had put my finance career aside, and I was like, no, I'm going to do narcissistic abuse recovery. And back then, you weren't supposed to use those kind of tools for trauma. But as I told you, I was on this mission to find something. And I literally just took the tools that I was given, and I did what I needed to do. And luckily, my brain is wired in a way where I was able to put it together in a very, very structured way. And yeah, they did have AC. So like the original intention was fulfilled, but it actually turned into a complete life changer, literally.
I'm really grateful you were uncomfortable that day, and that's what pushed you to get started. It's always the craziest little synchronicities, but I think either way, you would have been this. I can't imagine you being anything else. And I'm so glad because now here you are and you offer trainings every single year. I came through your certified hypnotist training, trauma informed. It was fantastic. It was beautifully put together. You did an
Thank you.
exceptional job. And this, mind you, this is after I'd already done several years at an educational facility called SWIHA, Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, and I spent about 4 years there, and I still learned things. So that's really saying something. And you've got more trainings coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. So I have a whole certified narcissistic abuse recovery coaching training, which is particularly for the purpose of narcissistic abuse recovery, because it is just such a huge topic and it's so relevant and it has happened to so many of us. And I can't do it all on my own. I'm also not everybody's cup of tea, which is absolutely fine. And the
That's
the work
debatable.
is just no, but it's fine, you know. But that's why it's important for me to train other people, you know, because, you know, some people like a more direct approach, other people might need a bit more fluff. I'm not the fluffiest kind of person, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's for me it's very very important to get the tools out there, because as I said, I can't do it all on my own, and the demand is there and it's so much needed. And basically the program consists of various modules which can be taken individually, because not everybody who wants to work in trauma wants to work with narcissistic abuse. So I very consciously took that apart, because at the end of the day, what we are dealing with is complex post traumatic stress. And the approach that I've developed is minimizing the impact, the symptoms of complex post traumatic stress within as little as 6 sessions, right? So that is not specific to
Which on its
narcissistic
own
abuse.
is really profound because I know people who've spent years. I remember when I first got diagnosed with complex PTSD,
Yeah.
my initial thought was, "Oh my god, my life is over. I'm gonna have
Mm.
to live with this for the rest of my life."
I
That
mean,
was
that's also what
yeah,
a lot of people get told, right? I mean, I was told that. I was told I would need
yeah.
to take medication for the rest of my life, and a part of my abuse was actually that I was drugged. So taking drugs for something
Wow.
that was kind of caused by drugs wasn't an option for me. So
Mhm.
but I was told the same thing, you know, broken beyond repair, a lost cause. I had a therapist who went like, "Oh, I'm at a loss for words." I'm like, "You're at a loss for words? What do you
Yeah.
mean? Don't you deal with this every day?" And she says to me, "Well, yes, I do, but you're an extremely sad case." I mean, needless to say, I never went back there, you know.
I don't think that was
So
helpful to hear that either. I can't
no,
imagine hearing that would be like, "Great, let's get to work."
and you're
Just
so vulnerable as well, right?
yes.
And
Yes.
so that's why it's important that we do have those tools available, and that's why I provide the training. And you know, it's survivors that want to help other people with their experience, it's medical professionals because they would like to help their clients better, therapists,
Yeah.
coaches, hypnotherapists. And at the end of the day, as I said, we're dealing with complex post-traumatic stress, and the common narrative is just like this is this lifelong condition and there is nothing that really can be done about it. But actually, with the right tools and the right support, recovery is possible, and it's actually so much easier than you would think. So that's what my training is designed to do.
And that's recovery in under 6 months to a year, which is wild,
I
depending on how the
mean,
person is ready to do, I mean, if they need to take their time, they take their time,
yeah.
but if they're ready, it can be under 6 months.
I mean, when
Yeah.
somebody is ready, they are ready, right? then it almost doesn't matter what tools you give them because they will do what they need to do. It's also important to say that we're not doing magic, right? Like this is healing work, and healing work doesn't have to be like fast, and it's everybody in their own time, and
Mhm.
you got to put the work in, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody's going to do the work for you, but as I said, if you have the right support, if you have guidance, if you have practical tools that actually allow you to access the damage where it was caused rather than
Yeah.
just trying to rationalize your way out of it, it makes the biggest difference. And it's not like your recovery journey is just gonna all of a sudden come to an end, because once we go on this journey, it's a never ending journey, and life will always happen. You will always meet people that push your buttons. Like any kind of relationship with another human being is bound to trigger you in some sort of way. And the thing is, some of those triggers are valid. And I think once people are on their healing journey, as soon as something feels uncomfortable, they go like, "Oh my god, I need to fix myself."
Mm.
So some of those triggers are valid. Sometimes we are supposed to be sad. Sometimes we're supposed to be angry. It's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but it's the right emotional response to the situation. But then, of course, if we have triggers that result in overreactions, then the healing work continues. But the beautiful thing is, once you've embarked on this journey, you also build a network. And then when something comes up, you just call somebody and go like, "Hey, I had this coming up. Can we sort it out?" And the whole resistance to it falls away, where you then actually end up, you know, actually having fun with it, even with the
Yeah.
uncomfortable moments,
Yeah.
because what you realize is, hold on a second, I'm actually the one who's in control here,
Yeah.
you know.
Hold my coffee. I'm about to shatter another glass ceiling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be a bit
Yeah.
frustrating, right? Because you go like, "Oh, does it ever
Yeah.
stop?" And it doesn't, but it's just the way, it's the most liberating gift you can
Yeah.
give yourself. And so when I say I facilitate recovery in as little as 6 sessions, that means what I help people do is regain their mental health, get their feet back on the ground. They regain their agency. They are fully functioning again. Uh, is this the end of the journey? No, it's not. It's the
No.
beginning of the journey. But once you are on that path, you very voluntarily continue there, right? And of course, part of that is also asking difficult questions. And you had mentioned earlier where it was like, "Oh, what's wrong with me?" Like, that's not the most productive question to ask, obviously. But what we do need to ask, if
Yeah.
we are the common denominator in our experiences, is, what is this actually all about? Because at the end of the day, there is something within us that makes this even possible, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the deeper healing aspect comes in.
One thing I want to talk about, just in terms of my experience, and I think this is a common thing for other people too, is you identify that first narcissistic relationship and you start to make the healing changes needed. You start to establish your sovereignty. You start to take back the locus of control over your life. You start to shift and to change. You let go of the shame. You let go of the guilt. The flashbacks ease off. And then lo and behold, you start having conflicts in other relationships. And so I was feeling bad because I was the common denominator. But at the same time, when a certain stereotype of person is what you know to feel safe, and you don't know anything else, that's what I'd surrounded myself with. So, was I the common denominator? Yes, I was. But also, I had a lot of toxic relationships. And then after a while, it was just like watching the dominoes fall. And it's like, oh, you know what? I'm ready. Let them all go. um, and as you start to heal, the trash does actually take itself out. And although it's uncomfortable, you can get to a point where you're like, you know what? I have clarity on this. I'm good. I can stay in my own lane and I can just keep thriving and moving towards the things I want to move to.
Yeah, and
Did you have a similar?
that's
Yeah.
incredible, isn't it? And
Yeah.
also things like realizing we don't need to sacrifice ourselves for love. Like, that's a big one, you know, like this is
Right.
what we learn, and that's what
Yeah.
gets us into trouble. We realize that, hold on a second, actually I am good enough. And all of those things that up until that point when you actually start doing healing work, like deep healing work, are just running in the background, and most of them you're completely unaware of, but they actually determine how we see the world, how we have
Yeah.
relationships, how we see ourselves. And I think once we come to realize that we are just okay in who we are, we actually have the permission, and we give ourselves the permission to be authentic in who we are, you know, to say no, having boundaries, all those kind of things. And it's a very steep learning, and we all have to go through it. But it's a complete game changer. And what it does is it just changes life in general, because it doesn't only change the relationships you have going forward, it changes the way you see the world. It changes what you see when you look in the mirror. Like, all of a sudden, you look in the mirror and you're actually seeing your best friend. And, you know, there will be like times where the two of you are not on the best terms,
Mm.
but you learned how to reconnect and make up, you know, with yourself, basically. And yeah, as I said, doing deep healing work and trauma recovery in whatever context is literally the biggest gift you can give yourself, because it's just such a different way of living. And first of all,
Yeah.
there is a way to come out the other side, and I've done it. You've done it. I see people do it every day. So regardless of what everybody says, no, it's actually possible. And then the way life is on the other side, it's something you couldn't have even imagined before. And I always used to be quite self confident, and I always made my dreams happen. It's just my personality. But it wasn't like I told myself I couldn't have that kind of life. It just simply wasn't on my radar. And now all of a sudden, my life couldn't be more authentic. And that's a whole different way of experiencing life, you know, when you're just unapologetically you. But to be able to do that, we need to put the work in. And unfortunately, there are experiences that bring us to our knees. They are literally life and death situations, but they
Yeah.
force us to actually go inward to survive. And when you do the healing work, that's the end result, you know?
Yeah. There are so many really good things in there. I had so many thoughts fleeting as you were just little things that I was remembering and thinking of going through it. And I think it can be an incredibly lonely journey. And I
Oh, it
think
is.
when you hit that loneliness, that's your check mark that you're doing it right. It's an
Yeah.
uncomfortable reward, but it is actually a reward just to kind of signify if you're on the right path. Yeah. Because it won't be too long after, and then you'll start attracting the right people and
Yeah.
healthy relationships and actually
And that
know.
that
Yeah.
actually that is the key. And with regards to the loneliness, it's
Mhm.
literally it's a soul destroying part of this whole
Yeah.
journey, because there's just such a big disconnect between what you're going through and what other people can relate to. And all this well-meaning advice, right? Time will heal all wounds and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And you're literally fighting for your life, and nobody takes it seriously because you just had a breakup, you know. So it is a terrible, terrible experience to have. But as you just said, what happens when you do your healing work is that you actually attract a new kind of person into your life who actually just gets you. And you won't find those people in those self help groups. I just wanted to mention that. So be careful when you feel lonely, and you will, because it is a very lonely endeavor, and you look for support, which is a very natural thing to do. And you find
Yeah.
yourself in those social media groups,
Yeah.
support groups. If they make you feel worse, leave those groups immediately, because that's not the support that you want.
Yeah.
And a lot of those groups come from really bad energies. And, if somebody puts a post and already puts a trigger warning before they even start writing, leave those groups immediately. They are not moderated, they're linguistically really bad. And it's more kind of like my story is worse than yours, and it's not
Yeah.
about the story. So be really, really mindful about how things make you feel, whether that's people, whether that's groups, whether that's really anything,
Yeah.
because you need your energy for your healing.
Yeah.
That's what we need the energy for. And the same applies for people. If you constantly um, get weird reactions from people, and you feel like you need to apologize, you need to justify yourself, you need to really put the work in trying to convince them or make them understand,
Yeah.
just stop talking to them about it. Really
And
stop
that
talking.
includes therapists. Let me just say, as a full out disclosure, if you don't find the right therapist, you can attract the wrong one. Been there, done it. It took me an extra year to recover from.
Yeah.
So
And then
if
you
you're
can
getting
feel
in your
it.
car after therapy and you're having an emotional flashback, end that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, like a lot of us who end up in narcissistic relationships, by default programming, we are people pleasers. We have a lack of boundaries. And the thing is, when it's about your well being, when it's about your healing work, you have the right to say no. And literally everything that doesn't make you feel good has got to go. And sometimes those things have to go, like putting no contact in place. Sometimes it's enough to just adjust, like if somebody doesn't get you, well, talk to them about the weather, something they can relate to, but not about your healing journey, not about your travel plans or your business plans. If they don't get it, just don't talk to them about it. And that's a way to protect your own energy, because as I said, when you are on your healing journey, you do need your energy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it really is learning a whole new way to live and to have
Hmm.
the nervous system function. When you were talking about using groups and things like that, I thankfully didn't go through that. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to put myself in that situation. I'm glad I didn't. But I can imagine the nervous system addiction that would create because they just replaced then the narcissist with this other thing that's having the same chemical cocktail play
Yeah,
out.
I mean, it's not like they would be trauma bonded to the group as such, but it's just very dysregulating to the nervous system, because the brain cannot distinguish if something's happening for real or whether we're imagining it. So if you're in a group that shares their, war stories, you read that, and your brain actually cannot distinguish whether this is happening to them or it's happening to you. And then there might be something you can relate to, which is triggering in the first place. So it's just an overdose of negativity, and the nervous system is already completely misregulated anyway. To start with, the amygdala is misfiring all the time, and you're constantly anxious 24/7 even without all of this. So you're basically just adding on top of your own trauma, you add secondary trauma on top of that. And it's not a forward moving motion at all. So just be really, really mindful of that.
Tell us a bit about your book. Do you have it with you?
I do. I do. It's called Me, Myself, and I. Oh, it's blurry. Can you see it? Wait.
Oh,
Okay,
okay, there we go. Now it's
let me
focused.
the background. Me, myself, and I. This says for her, because I have a version for men as well.
Oh,
Because narcissistic abuse can happen to
that's right.
everyone. And this is basically my group coaching program in book format. And it's a very practical toolbox. It's basically my toolbox for your pocket. So you can try out little, small, practical tools and that make a big difference. They're designed for you to reconnect with yourself. They are designed to break the trauma bond and really, give you the momentum to start moving forward in the right direction. And it's a bit like a self-care buffet, like I dish out what I got, and every day you can pick up something and you try it out, you like it, you put it in your toolbox. It doesn't resonate just yet,
Yeah.
you just come back later when the time is right. And if you know me, you know that I'm all about the practical solution. I'm not much of a theoretical person, so this is very practical for you to start building your own toolbox. And it also, as I said, it's my group coaching program in book format, but I also have the group coaching program coming up in February, actually. So that's the live program that goes with the book.
How long does the program run for? And who do you recommend is going to benefit from that the most?
So it's called a NARIC Toolbox, and it runs from the 1st of February until the 28th of February. I run it once a year in February because February is such a weird month when nobody knows what to do with it anyway, right? Like January took a whole year and then it's not spring yet. So I always run this in February because it's a fun little thing to do and it just gives you the momentum the moment that spring starts, you have this momentum to move forward. And it is suitable for narcissistic abuse survivors, but it's also suitable for anybody who has lost themselves somewhere on the way, because we don't need to be abuse survivors to lose ourselves
Mhm.
somewhere. At the end of the day, it all comes down to practical tools and self care. And when I say self care, I don't mean the hair and the nails, but like really solid self care. It's tools that all of us should have in our toolbox. So it's literally open to anybody who really would like to reconnect with themselves. And it's also one module of my certification training, because at the end of the day, not everybody is ready for deep dive therapy. So if we want to go out there and help other people with our experience, we can do that even with like little simple tools, um, to just create that same momentum for other people. So survivors, as much as therapists, hypnotherapists, coaches, medical professionals, anybody who would like to have some practical tools in their toolbox for themselves, and of course to share, because
Yeah.
that's my whole intention, right? To share what I got.
And it is really important that it's a toolbox because not every tool will work for every day. And I had a lot of that experience myself where it's like, oh, what is it? My go tos just aren't doing it today. So
Hmm.
it's good that you've got a wide variety for people to explore and try. And you may have an off day when you need to try a tool that ordinarily you wouldn't. So it's nice that
Exactly.
that's ready for people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always encourage everybody to be curious, because there is no size fits all solution. And
Yeah.
the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more flexibility you have for yourself, how you deal with life's challenges, but then also, of course, what you can offer other people if that's what you want to do. And the intention of the group coaching program, as much as the book, is really to tickle the curiosity, because it's a whole set of different modalities. And then of course, if something resonates, you might just venture out and explore more in that direction. And that's exactly the point.
Beautiful. And did you want to go and elaborate on more of the NARC expert program? Was there any
Sure.
part of it you wanted to dive into more deeply?
Yeah, of course, I can mention it. So the NARIC toolbox is a module of the whole certified narcissistic abuse expert training, as I already mentioned, in February. In January, actually in 2 weeks' time, on the 10th, I'm going to run my narcissistic abuse expert module, which is actually the only module in the whole certification program that deals with narcissists to a limited extent, because my focus, of course, is the survivor. And this one is suitable for anybody who either has experienced narcissistic abuse, maybe is still trying to figure it out and is putting the puzzle pieces together, who has already come out of it and is in the learning phase of the journey. But it's also suitable for medical professionals, for therapists, hypnotherapists, coaches, social workers, lawyers, mediators, HR, charities. So basically, anybody who is on the front line who potentially deals with narcissistic abuse survivors, because as we said, there is a huge disconnect between the experience and what people perceive. And this one is an educational module, and it will teach you everything you need to know. And I'm not saying everything there is to know, because somebody comes up with something
There's
new
a
every
lot.
day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything you need to know, cutting through the noise and really putting the dots together to get a comprehensive understanding as a narcissistic abuse expert. And then, of course, that will allow you to, reach out to people to start helping them. Maybe you want to give talks, maybe you want to connect with local organizations and really start moving this kind of work forward. So that
And
starts on the 10th of January.
and then I want to say, I believe you touch on some of the things like co-parenting, going through the legal process as well.
Yes. So it's basically everything, as I said, you need to know. And the smallest part is actually the narcissist. It's more about like different narcissistic dynamics, because we already talked about the relationships, narcissistic abuse in families, narcissistic abuse in the workplace, things like that. We will
Yeah.
be addressing the trauma that narcissistic abuse causes. We will be looking at the neuroscience, what is actually happening in the brain, and how can we reverse that neurological brain damage that is actually caused through narcissistic abuse. We will be looking at legal proceedings with a narcissist. That's also where a huge disconnect is, because
Yeah.
lawyers and judges, they pretend like we're dealing with a normal person. We're not dealing with a normal person, and it's not a normal divorce, and all the normal rules don't apply. So
That's right.
legal proceedings with a narcissist, parenting with a narcissist, because parenting with a narcissist is definitely not a team sport.
No,
So you will,
100% don't recommend.
I know, right?
No.
So
Yeah.
all of those topics will be covered, and it will give you a solid understanding that will allow you to hold a space for somebody
Yeah.
in that situation, but also give them practical guidance and how to deal with the situation.
I wish I had this when I was going through my 20s and encountering those things, because there was really nothing that could have prepared me. And it wasn't even my child, it was my stepchild, but I was there for the whole ride,
Hmm.
watching my spouse go through this. And the legal system, the education systems, they weren't equipped for this. They didn't
And they
take
still
those
aren't,
things. No.
right? They still aren't, and that's why we need to be aware that this is actually a thing, because it's very, very important, whether it's from a therapeutic point of view, from a legal
Yeah.
point of view, that we surround ourselves with people that actually get it,
Yeah.
because otherwise we minimize our own success in coming out the other side of that, because otherwise we're just left fighting, fighting, fighting. Whereas if we have the right people in our corner, and which actually leads me to some something I wanted to say. People like us usually don't ask for help, because we are so used to fighting our own battles, and we learn to always put other people's well-being before our own. If you are going through narcissistic abuse recovery, now is the time to change that, because you got to be your own priority, and it is absolutely okay to ask for help, because this is something you don't need to go through on your own, and you also cannot go through on your own, because you are at a point in your life where you just need somebody who has walked through that, who has tools to share with you, that help you come out the other side. So no matter how reluctant you are to ask for help, it's okay to do that. And please, please, please do it, because it's going to make the biggest difference. Because if you have the right people that have your back, the situation is challenging enough as it is, and it will remain challenging, but you have much more support. So please, even if it doesn't come naturally to you, please do ask for help. It's okay.
Even if you're not sure that that's what you're going through, if something you've heard today sounds remotely familiar, you've been thinking about your life while we're talking, I definitely recommend exploring the book and see if there's things in there that resonate, that help you make sense of things. And if you are someone who's parenting, then the toolbox can actually be used to support your children as well, to teach them healthy things, to help them work with their emotions, their nervous system. It's something that everybody needs. And even if it's not exactly narcissistic abuse, because I mean, some of us have had other different experiences with other DSM labels, if you will.
Yeah. At the
It
end of the
doesn't
day,
really
it's not
matter.
about the
Yeah.
label, right? It's about
No.
what's going on for you. And if you feel you
Right.
disconnected with yourself, if you feel like your nervous system is dysregulated, if you're like really twitchy and hypervigilant and,
Mhm.
have this anxious undercurrent constantly,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter where that came from as such, because what label you want to give it, it matters what's going on for you and what to do about that.
Yeah. It's the way you come back home to yourself at the end of the
Mhm.
day.
Yes.
And also, because you aren't busy enough,
Mm.
you've created a new conference coming to Portugal in 2026. Do you want to dive into that?
Sure. So I live in Lisbon in Portugal, and I will be hosting the first Hypno Summit in Portugal. And it's going to take place on the 3rd and 4th of October next year. And yeah, I'm super excited about it. It's going to be in the heart of Lisbon. And please do join me and, come explore, come to learn, come to transform. Also, have a Portuguese cultural experience because it's such a beautiful country. Lisbon is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. The food is amazing. And I'm very, very excited about this opportunity to host a hypnosis conference in Portugal. It's not only hypnosis related, but I will be introducing modalities that are very complementary with hypnosis, and it's just going to be a really exciting experience.
Yeah. I can't imagine you doing anything not trauma informed. So I know that that's definitely going to have a role in what you're offering to the community. Are you currently taking proposals for presenters?
I am. Um, I guess I can share the link with you and you can put it in the comments. Yeah, proposals are still open. Dates are confirmed, hotel is confirmed. So if you're looking for a trip to Portugal and come explore here on business expense, if you need an excuse, there's your excuse. So,
Gotta love those perks. Yeah.
mhm.
Well, anything coming to mind that you'd like to share about what is going to make your conference a little different?
Wow, what is it? Well, it's not going to be salesy at all because my intention is to give information, content, transformation, and it will be all about topics. It's also open to the general public and to medical professionals. So it's going to be all about topics that so many people deal with and struggle with, and they're being told there's nothing you can do about, like narcissistic abuse, for example, or trauma in general. And the intention of the conference really is to explore the endless opportunities that hypnosis has to offer for us as hypnosis professionals, but also for people that are just curious about it and are in life situations that may seem hopeless when in reality, you know, actually we can do something about it. So it's for us as hypnotherapists, but also to raise the awareness in the more general public about what is even possible with the tools that we have in our field.
So, within the work that you're doing right now, are you still having availability to take on clients?
Limited, but yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you've got some speaking engagements coming up as well. Anything on the highlight list?
The, I mean, a lot actually. I was just going
Yeah,
through
no problem.
my schedule. So from March until November, I'm pretty much on the road. And the biggest highlights, I think for 2026 is actually I was invited to speak at the biggest trauma conference in Europe. So that is huge.
Well, ladies and gents, if you would like to dig into this work, you want to start healing your trauma, having a toolbox and resources, rock and roll coach Ronnie is ready to help you move through this and to take your life back, take your sovereignty back, take your agency, get your passion back, actually live for you. I recommend her website, and I will have everything in the show notes. Ronnie, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, if this is an experience that you're going through right now and it does feel like the end of the road, please know that it's not. And as I already said, please do ask for help. It's okay to ask for help because even if it may feel that way right now, you are actually not alone in this. There are, believe it or not, people who understand and do yourself that favor and connect. And of course, if you would like to connect with me, please come find me, have a look at the website, send me an email if you have any questions. I'm a very approachable person, so please feel free to reach out. I'd be very happy to hear from you.
That's it, loved ones. So, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, stay well, but most of all, stay inspired. Bye for now.
Bye.